What is good, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to Team COG here. Today, guys, I'm bringing you my Crusadia Kaiju or my Crusadia OTK, whatever you want to call it, deck profile that got me from Gold 5 all the way up to Platinum 5. So if you guys don't know, that's a lot of wins, a lot of consecutive wins. I haven't really lost that much with the deck, and it's kind of just surprised me. And it's been a mix between, like, your average Blue Eyes player on here and then, like, Birds or your Sky Striker or just a different assortment of meta along with a different assortment of casual in a sense. With that being said, that's almost like at locals too. You're always going to be able to see local play is always going to be competitive and casual. You're not always going to get casual. You're always going to get competitive. However, guys, my profile here is something that I always like to do with Master Duel. Even though if you guys have not heard my vocalized opinion about Master Duel, the AI is great. Everything is great about Master Duel. However, I do not like the fantasy format they have on Master Duel. It does not help us get better at IRL play or to reflect IRL play in real life because you're not going to get max seed here in the TCG. So it doesn't do us any good to test on Master Duel. Whereas, you know, like other simulators like Omega, Dueling Book, etc., YuGiOh Pro allows us to get like that quality testing because we're not going to get hit with these cards that are legal on Master Duel, but illegal in the TCG. However, I like to make my decks be able to reflect to IRL play. So this list right here, you could take on and play Master Duel, or you could take to your locals and play. And going through, guys, if you guys maybe want to know what you can change out, I'll gladly explain to you the card choices and stuff that you could easily play in IRL versus like if you don't have the money for in-perms, whereas like ultra rare in-perms here on Master Duel is a lot easier to obtain, and etc, etc. And so without further ado, guys, let's just go ahead and jump into my platinum ranked Crusadia Kaiju deck profile. To start off with, guys, we have the Reclusia. If you guys don't know what Reclusia does by now, we're about to take you to school. All the Crusadia share the same effect that they can special summon themselves to a zone a link monster points to. That is not an activating effect, it just happens. Reclusia's effect is when its special summon allows you to target one Crusadia card you control and one card your opponent controls and destroy them. Not much more can be said. This card is really good in the going second strategy. This card just allows you to force so much stuff. Back row, especially in like when they like set just one back row, you're able to solve that because most of the times in like at least 3 or 4 games in a row, they've set in perm and they've been holding it for Equimax, so you just end up smacking Reclusia down under the Regulex or under the Magus, forcing it, and then you just one punch him. Moving on, though, we have Arborea. Arborea is not really as needed as she once was in like the combo variants of the deck that exist. She is just there for protection, and then at the end of the combo lines, if you happen to have a level 4 still left out, whether it be Maximus, Draco, Paralytic Sea when it's special summoned, you are able to make Dawn Dragster, which is a spell and trap negate. You normally only go that route when you're ending on like Apollosa, so that Apollosa is able to not just lose to Chalice or Imperm, so that way you can just like protect an app for 3, etc. Leonis, believe it or not, in IRL play, Leonis's effect does not come up. The ability to do piercing is not prevalent. However, in Master Duel, where there's so many people that T-set and pass, like Leonis is a killer, man. If you guys have not witnessed what it can do. I actually played, and you guys will see this in next week's replay, or I guess, yeah, next week's replay, that this poor guy summons an Incantation and then puts Chaos Max, you know, shout out to Distant Coder, puts him in the same, you know, Link Monster zone as my Equimax, and then I just end up punching him for 35,000 damage. It was totally remarkable. But defense piercing can come up, however, more prominent in Master Duel than in IRL. Draco, it seems like no matter what variant that you play, Draco here is actually like a key component to both strategies. If you're playing the combo variant, you need a dragon that you can search that can turn into Striker Dragon Pisty. Or in this variant, this guy right here allows you to chain block your Magus so you do not lose to Ash Blossom, because in this variant, the most important card is Maximus. If you do not have Maximus, honestly, you can't win. You really can't, because Maximus lets you do double battle damage. So this is like the single most important card in the deck, and I really wish that Emergency Teleport said level 4 or lower. I'm not gonna lie, because that would solve so many issues that the deck has. Because currently right now the deck is very normal summon reliant. If you normal summon and your normal summon gets disrupted in any sort of fashion, we practically lose. I think Crusadia needs a few things, and one of those things is a Crusadia Synchro Monster to let us utilize Arborea. And I think something on the lines of like if it's being pointed to, it has the quick effect to Monster Reborn of Crusadia. That'd give you some like very cool Crusadia-centric lines to be able to go like Equimax plus the Synchro to be able to reborn Reclusia during the opponent's turn for a pop. You reborn Draco for a recursion, you know, things like that. But, you know, we can always hope and dream. And one of the other things that Crusadia would really need is something that allows us not to be so reliant on the normal summon. Emergency Teleport would have been almost great, but it's level 3 or lower. So I think that we need just something to allow us to surpass that normal summon requirement. One Warlike Sea World Crown. the Honorary Crusadia. This card is actually pretty good in both going first and going second. It's a disruption on itself, so like as you guys can tell, since this is going second, if we are forced to go first, we really can't set up a board. A World Legacy Crown allows us to have that extra form of negation to be able to set up something rather than nothing. Most of the time, your end boards are either going to be like, you have a plethora of different versions of it, but for the most part, they're very low ceiling and they're just very minimalistic in what they can do. The boards that you end on is either Appaloosa for 3 with a Crown and a Dragster, or Appaloosa for just Dragster, Appaloosa and Crown, Echomex Negate and Crown. Or if you need to just like build a wall, you can go Avermax plus Crusadia Power, which cannot be passed unless you have a Kaiju, and just certain things like that. You just kind of got to read the situation, especially if you're going second, or if you're going like game 2 in IRL play and you see what your opponent's playing against. You can set up a better going first board. And Master Duel is a little bit more difficult when they force you to go first, because of course when they force you to go first, that's when you're going to see the God Hand for going second. So normally in that case, you don't really, and Master Duel is like, there's a lot of L-Lich and back row running around, so it's almost better to just go ahead and climb up into Avermax with the set power and pass, because Avermax can just beat down a lot of things, and Avermax is very hard to be solved. Not much more can really be said in that matter. There's the differences in the fantasy format of Master Duel and the IRL format of the TCG, is that you get those in TCG, you get those games 2 and 3 where you can adjust your combo lines. So like if you need to end on Appaloosa for 3 because you're playing against Drytron, you know to do that. Whereas if you blindly go first because your opponent made you go first and you make Appaloosa and your opponent just sets 5 and pass, you're donesy. Whereas if you made Avermax, because Avermax has the non-targeting protection along with being backed up by a Crusadia Power, is untouchable. You just definitely get a lot more benefit out of it. But moving on, I just noticed this myself. We are rocking right here 4 Kaijus. 4 Kaijus is what I've always played. You could technically play 5, and I'm thinking very hard about doing that. And if I was to do that, I would actually probably play 3 Godarla instead of like the 2 Gamma Seal. This is my first time even looking at it. In my IRL deck profile, I do actually have 2 Godarla, so I just haven't transitioned it yet. But you should definitely maybe look at playing 5 Kaijus. 4 is good enough for now, but 5 definitely would probably put you above that threshold to be able to see it all the time, or at least see one more often. Of course, statistics and probability. But I would definitely do 3 Godarla because of the Wind Barrier statue still floating around. In IRL play with Flow Underease, and in here with the big giant chicken that's able to summon the little chicken from the deck, you definitely would want to out the Barrier Statue here. So that will probably change in the next deck profile here for the Master Duel variant of the list. But I mean, I even count this card as a hand trap. The Kaijus are kind of a hand trap in their sense, right? Is even though they do not interact on your opponent's turn, on your turn, they immediately solve an issue the opponent has. And it very well fits the same thing as like other hand traps, whereas like Ash Blossom might not be good against every deck, but Ash is good against some. Same with Ogre, Bell, etc. So Kaijus might not be good against every deck, but they're going to be good against most of the decks. And the fact that this card is like a frame 1 spot removal, and it's a card you can rip off the top of the deck, unlike any other hand trap that becomes dead. These cards are live, especially when you're playing against like the mirror or like a combo match. This card right here just allows you to just rip it off and plant it. And if you open 2, they actually form as any 2 Kaijus are an extender as long as you happen to open a Crusadia. And then moving on, we are down here to 3 Paralytic Seed. I even thought about cutting this card for like something else, but this card just does so much. It allows us to go first. It allows us to do a lot of stuff. It allows us to draw into more cards, etc., etc. And also going second not only allows us to have a better like this card just facilitates Douglas the Watchless, or excuse me, number 60, Dugaris the Timeless. And Dugaris does 3 things, and everything that Dugaris does benefits this deck in some fashion. And then if you are going against a very back row heavy matchup, you can turn one of these into Linkrevo to kind of give you an extra blanket of protection from trap cards and stuff like that. But this card right here just facilitates Dugaris and chain blocks the Magius, which is really important, because if you do not open Maximus, you need to get access to Maximus, that's like Maximus is the number 1 card for this deck. Before Brilliant Fusion got hit, I was actually testing a list with Brilliant Fusion, because you're able to dump Maximus, and then you could just search Draco instead of having to be forced this, and Draco could get this back. But, Konami since then has banned Brilliant Fusion, ripped Brilliant Fusion. It gave the deck a more pure playthrough where you just could play Brilliant and just a bunch of Crusadias and still not have to worry about playing all the extra bricks. But anyway, I digress. Back to Paralytic Seed. Reminiscent on old times. This card is just extremely good. And it's just, I do not recommend, if you play any deck that has a downward pointing arrow, I recommend playing it, because even if you do not like Douglas the Watchless, you could easily fit in some other rank 4 if you wanted. If you really were scared of like hand traps, you could still play Rafflesia and put in the Gravediggers. However, I cut that in the sense of like, it's a brick in the deck that I don't want to see. We prefer this because Douglas is just so good. Douglas just allows us to, I'll talk to him when we get to the extra deck, but Douglas is amazing. I played him a long time ago, and it's just, good to have him back. But moving on to the spells, we are on 1 Monster Reborn, broken 1-ofs. I am playing 1 Pot of Desires. Technically, in Master Duel, you could play 2. However, since I am trying to make this reflectable to the TCG, I'm only playing 1. 2 Succession, no need for playing the Guard Dragon because we're not doing like the Guard Dragon play lines with dragons anymore. So 2 Successions are better. You could probably, even if you wanted to get away, you could play like something like Living Fossil. You could banish what you special summon back with, but like depending on what that is, it's like 3 different reborn spells that are not once per turn, because if you happen to open 2 Successions and 1 Succession is dead because Succession is a hard once per turn. 1 Ingage here. Engage. The Sky Striker package does so much, and like back in the day when this deck first came out in Cybernetic Horizon, we were playing 3. You didn't have to play Engage, you could play just 3 Hornet Drones, and what Kagari and stuff did for the deck was amazing. It literally gave you the ability to chain block. If you saw Hornet Drones was 2 monsters, so it allowed you to have it gave your OTK more consistency, and having like a 1 card. If you open just 1 Crusadia and Hornet Drones, you had the full OTK just because of the amount of monsters that Hornet Drones facilitates, and it was just insane. And then like very often, not very often, you are able to resolve the draw effect of Engage here. However, that's not important. You're not here for the draw. You're here for the frame 1 Engage, so they either waste their Ash on this, or if they don't waste their Ash, you can either grab Widow Anchor or Hornet Drones, and that just gives you that. Both those cards are very powerful in this sense. And maybe, just maybe, you'll have like 3 spells in the grave that you can resolve this. I have resolved it a few times. The draw effect is just you activate it, resolve a few spells like Power. More so, you're resolving more reactive spells like Desires, and then like Power to protect something, Called by the Grave, Twin Twisters, etc. that you've discarded off of Dugaris, or you've Titty Twister that turn. But not very often you're getting the draw, sadly. As you guys can see, we don't play exactly a lot of spells to facilitate that. But 2 Twin Twisters. You could definitely play Harpy's Feather Duster, or actually Lightning Storms would be better. You really don't want to have the discard fodder, but you know, like Lightning Storms, this would probably be Lightning Storms. In Master Duel, make it Lightning Storms. In IRL life, if you can't afford Lightning Storms, Twin Twister does the thing. It's just I don't like the pitching, and the only time like the pitching has ever become important is when I'm pitching an additional spell to make Engage live. So other than that, you just have to have some form of back row move on here. In IRL play, where black back row decks are not being as respected, you could probably get away with just playing 1 Harpy's Feather Duster and stuff like that. Okay, so Called by the Grave. This is at 2, but as I told you guys before, I'm playing very much to mirror the TCG list. We are playing 1 Called by the Grave, 1 Hornet Drones, and 1 Widow Anchor. So I don't need to explain these. I just kind of went through these. But if you guys look at all the 1-of spells that we're playing, Monster Reborn, Desires, Engage, all these spells are insane. The only one that's probably the worst is going to be Widow Anchor. But Widow Anchor is an additional like Forbidden Chalice that allows you to play into a board. Or is that like it allows you just to search things, especially I've noticed like where if you're not able to put lethal on, you Crusadia Testament just allows you to draw cards, and drawing into Engage or drawing into Widow Anchor is just a very good way to be able to set a card to be able to have a disruption when you decide to end on like Avermex or Pass, or if you end on like Apollosa or Pass, you still have like the Widow Anchor to still be like a safety net. Moving on though, we are on to Crusadia Power. We are playing 2 of these. I do not recommend playing 3 because they are once per turn, and 3 can really brick you. Crusadia Power just allows our Crusadias to stick. Not much more can really be said. That's why we're playing 2 of it. It's essentially in the sense of another form of Called by the Grave, but just for Crusadia monsters. And there's literally there's not often you are not going Crusadia lines. So as long as they don't have Strike or Judgment or like Warning or anything, Crusadia Power is going to allow you to push through things and allow your Crusadia monsters and effects to stick and resolve, which is really important, especially when you do not open Maximus. And it's very important for your Magius to resolve, and they end up hitting you with Imperm, Valor, or something like that, even though you've chain blocked it, and Power just allows you to block it and turn it off so that your Magius gets you the Maximus, and then it's off to the races, because whatever hand trap they used, unless it's like Imperm, they're not going to be able to use it again, because everything's like a hard once per turn. Crusadia Testament, this card actually needs to be discussed, because I think this card is truly insane. I really didn't think about how important it was until I started playing those games where I'm just like short by like 100 points of damage, or I'm short a little bit. Testament just keeps you in the game, and it almost just the tempo that this card gives you just almost overwhelms the opponent to where like even if they out what you just did, you're going to do it again. But this card right here says your opponent cannot activate cards and effects and act to the activation of Crusadia monster effects this turn. So that effect alone, I've used that effect I think 3 or 4 times already. I've seen set 5 pass. I've opened both Power and Testament, and then like a full and the rest of the hands of Crusadia. I've straight up just framed one went Testament, because if I do Testament, they cannot strike my effects. However, they can still strike the summons, but you know they don't know that, because nobody in Yu-Gi-Oh, regardless of IRL play or Master Duel, reads. So I've done that, and they've not been able to respond to the effects of my of my Crusadias. In fact, I had an instance where I ended up going like Chainlink 1 Magius, Chainlink 2 Draco, and they could not in-perm me because of Draco. Even though they wanted to in-perm the Magius, they still couldn't do it because it was in response to an effect. So, and then the best effect, if this, after damage calculation, if your Crusadia Link monster destroys an opponent's monster by battle, draw cards equal to the monster's Link rating. So you're always going to be drawing 3 to 4 cards off this card. And it's very hard for the opponent to make a comeback after that, because you've just spent your entire hand to one punch them, so you're hitting them for 78, so much damage, and then you're just getting 3 to 4 cards that allow you to have more disruptions if you drew into other things, or more other Crusadia monsters that allow you to like more solidify your board state and stuff like that, etc. Also, it just gives you like advantage. Like if your entire board gets broken, you'll just do it again. Now we are going on to the traps. I do not really like purple cards, but 3 in-perms. If you do not have these in IRL, you can play Chalice. Chalice does exactly the same thing, except for in-perms just give you a little bit more versatility on whether you want to drop it during your opponent's turn or during your turn, which is kind of nice. In-perm just also, like, in-perm just is better than Chalice. I'm really not going to lie. You can get away with playing Chalice, but in-perm is just better because, like, if you play against those, like, very, like, strong combo decks, like, having the in-perm to stop Verte, to stop those, like, problematic cards like or Dagda, versus sitting there and letting them set it up just is a little bit better than just waiting for them to be reactive. In-perm is just, overall, just better in a sense, but you can play Chalice. Crusadia Crawler, I have not got rid of this card yet because in that you don't know if you're going first or going second, and in those lines where if you're able to get a little bit higher, you're honest to God, you're able to end on like Equimex with a Dragster along with a Crawler, so that's 2 disruptions, that's a spell and Omni Negate, and then Crawler gives you a follow-up, which is what this really OTK deck really needs, is a follow-up when forced to go first. If we go first, we make our board, we get blown out, and we have no follow-up, we're not going to be able to we don't even have a chance to win, whereas a Crawler gives us that ability to be able to search for a World Legacy card, giving us the ability to have a follow-up in the sense of World Legacy Succession, or if we already opened a monster, Crown. Crown is actually really good. Crown checks opponent's Apollosis pretty well. Just by you going Crawler, search Crown, your opponent makes Apollosa, you pass. There's an Apollosa for like 4, you're staring down with like 2 Crusadias, plus the Crown in hand. Crown can special summon itself, and Crown checks the Apollosa. But like other than that, this card actually does not come up too much. I still play it just for that simple fact of like you don't know if you're going to win or lose a dice roll, so you need to just have this card just so you have the ability to use it. It still is faithful, still comes to my hand faithfully all the time, but it is what it is. It's a necessary piece to the puzzle. If you guys want to notice, we're not playing the field spell. That's because of Paralytic Seed and Dugar, so Timeless. The field spell is 100% a brick. Even if you do happen to see Crusadia Crawler, it is still more useful than the field spell. Okay, so here we guys go down to the extra deck here. Pretty plain and simple. 1 Dragster. Dragster is for Arborea plus any level 4 to give us a spell and trap negate. And this guy is mostly just used here to kind of like help protect the Apollosa from in-perm and stuff like that. Because like this deck can end on like a 3 to 4 material Apollosa really easy. Like pretty much any 2 Crusadias get you to a 3 material Apollosa. So like as long as you have like additional bodies in your hand, you're going to be able to make this. Douglas, the watch list here. This card is phenomenal. I'll read you guys what this card does. It just takes 2 level 4 monsters. You detach 2 monsters to activate one of these effects. You skip your draw phase the next turn, but you draw 2 cards, discard 1, so it allows you to dig deeper for Kaijus, deeper for extenders if needed. It's also really good Ash bait. If you happen to open everything, you just want to bait that Ash, you can do that as well. There's never a greater feeling than you go into Garis to skip to use this to draw. They Ash it, then you just search Testament later in the turn and end up drawing 4 cards. So it's almost like Dagaris didn't even matter. And then like when you like don't get your draw phase the next turn, you've already drew so many cards, it's okay. Or you can skip your next main phase, especially when 1 monster from your graveyard in defense position. If they deny you access to get in the Maximus back, like if they end up stopping Draco, but you have the ability, like, and you held Paralytic Seed for later in the turn, you can just go Paralytic Seed, make this, use this guy to reborn back Maximus effect, as long as it's to his own Link monster points to target a Crusadia, deal battle damage. This is probably this is what allows us to hit for like 30-some thousand damage. And this effect just says, like, skip the next battle phase of your next turn, but double the attack of 1 monster you control until the end of this turn. So you pretty much put this plus Maximus under Equimex, and then you go ahead and you double the damage of Equimex right there. It's truly remarkable how big Equimex can get, and then you're just hitting. It doesn't really matter what they have. It's just this guy helps close out games. This is why you don't need to play the field spells, because you can make this guy with Paralytic Seed. You can make this guy, if you hold Draco for later in the line, you can go Draco under Equimex, Draco to add back Maximus, special Maximus target, then you overlay for Dugaris, and then you go Dugaris effect, and then that's more than enough damage than Revival could ever offer. Moving on though, not to like we're getting kind of long here. Link Spider for when you get rocked, or potentially like if you happen to run out of like targets for the token that Hornet Drones gives you. Kagari, not much more can be said. Used for Hornet Drones, it has the ability to add us back. So Kagari just allows us to facilitate like better, more monsters. Triple Magius here. This card is your Rhoda. Gains whatever it points to. What it points to cannot attack. Hayate. I really couldn't find my Hayate, but you can play Link Kribo. You can play Kaina. You can play any other Sky Striker you want. I just think that this card allows us to play a little bit better in the sense of it has a downward pointing arrow. And if you open no Crusadias, you can play this very watered down Striker game if you only open like Hornet Drones or Engage. Because then you could like go Hayate, attack, dump Widow Anchor, link into Kagari, Kagari add back Widow Anchor, and there you kind of have like a very weak. And if you open like a few Imperms with that, there you go. Link Kribo's in here so you can turn one of the Paralytic Seeds into a Link Kribo so you can stop like traps when going second. Nightmare Phoenix is very easy to make. Again, Crusadia plus Paralytic Seed is like Phoenix, so a draw. So like you're able to solve a card that way. And then it gives you instant Equimax access. So like if you fear the rock and you go normal summon, special. Excuse me, it does not. Never mind. I totally forgot you summoned 2 monsters. But it just gives you instant Equimax access because you have a Link 1 and a Link 2 monster, like 2 Link monsters. So you're able to just go right up into Equimax. Regulex here. Regulex is really good. It allows you to search your spell and traps. It allows us to search Testament, Crawler, Power, etc. And it also is like, if you can't get to Equimax because of like resources, you've been depleted, this guy can still OTK in the sense as long as he's pointing to a big monster. Spatha is here to shift things around so that you can either easily OTK or for the going first combo, Spatha is what allows us to make an Apollosa for 3 to 4. The man, the myth, the legend. I wish I don't really have any space to play this guy. You should probably play 2 Equimax. You could arguably cut down the second Striker card and play, because like Link Spider can turn into whatever whatever the token wants to, like as long as you have Kagari, you could literally get away with it. But you could technically play 2 Equimax, and thinking about it, probably the call, play 2 Equimax. But this guy is what allows us to 0-1 punch. It just gains whatever it points to. Quick effect negation. This card is just a great boss monster, and Konami needs to give Crusadia some more support so that they can have like a decent going first board that's not reliant on like other outside engines. Avermax, I haven't played with this guy in forever, but this is the wall that we build when we cannot either break their board or the wall that we build when going first. Just being able to smack this guy down with a Crusadia power makes him unmovable outside of a Kaiju, and even if he is able to be moved, Avermax gets the last say in the matter. He's able to non-targeting shuffle back any card on the field if he leaves the field by an opponent's card, and this card is just a battle god. It gains whatever it points to when a special summon monster attacks it. It cannot be targeted by monster effects, and they have to target this card for attacks. It's just, it's truly crazy. And if you open like insanely busted, like I'm talking like any 2 Crusadias get you to Apollosa, but any 2 Crusadias also can get you to Avermax, and the other 3 cards are just insane. You can probably also get to like a Avermax plus an Apollosa. I mean, that's probably the best pinnacle board you can get to with any hand given. But Apollosa here, you just make this with Spatha. Spatha summon Drake. You just hold the Draco. Make Spatha special Draco. Draco add back the card you normal summon. Spatha move special the card you normal summon. Make a link 3 app. And there you go. 2 cards get you to an Apollosa, which is really good. But anyway, guys, that is it for the deck profile. Stay tuned for this next week's video of highlights of Master Duel, where I'll probably be showcasing more of punching some people in the face. And if you guys want to see like an IRL profile, let me know. I'd love to do these things. Work has been kind of crazy. That's why content's been kind of like sporadic a little bit. They've been a little bit of pause just because work's been kind of getting overwhelming. But Master Duel is good for one thing, and that is content creation. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. Please remember, if you guys have not already, go ahead and like and subscribe to the channel. Check out the links down in the description below, which I've been really forgetting to mention early in the video, but I'll have a little pop-up happen, and the links of 2 Imperium Duels, proud sponsor of the channel. Everything down in the description, like I just said. But most importantly, you guys remember to stay safe and stay healthy. This is Charles from Team COG, signing out.